All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for jumping on board with us today. Yeah, and what I'm gonna look at is not only looking at the flood products and kind of reviewing the IBW part with that, but also kind of what Jeff was talking about there, starting to look at some of the changes in simplification ideas that are coming out for not only flood products, but products as weather service warning products as a whole. So let's see, here we go. So we're going to look at the kind of the impetus for the change, and we'll talk a little bit, and this may help answer Evan's question just a little bit that we were just talking about. So we'll talk a little bit of some of the impetus for some of these changes. We're going to look at, we'll do a quick review back through the impact-based flash flood warnings. Mike spent a pretty good amount of time going over the changes that are, that are occurred with tornado warnings and now coming with severe weather warnings. So we'll kind of see how these kind of relate with those products as well. And then we're going to look at some of the consolidation. This consolidation, we're going to start with the flood products, which, having worked, on the hydro side of the house for as long as I did, it's good to finally see some of this consolidation because I think it'll help alleviate some of the questions that have popped up from time to time as far as why we issue what we issue. So hopefully this will kind of help with that. And then we'll kind of look a little bit ahead at the future changes that are coming beyond this, in the next kind of 2 to 4 year time frame. So ultimately, why are we changing? What brought this impetus around to really start looking at how we issue products and what we're issuing? And a lot of it is done through social science. Social scientists got in with weather service, and they've done a lot of surveying, a lot of talking to partners and customers and things like that. And there's kind of two big areas that they found here. One is the terms watch, warning, and advisory are confusing. A lot of folks still don't understand what they are. I mean, I know we spend a lot of time trying to educate folks. I know you guys do when you're on air. You're kind of trying to tell people the difference between the two products as far as what actions they need to take when, things like that. But as much as we've tried that education thing, it's just really not getting all the way across. So many people really don't quite understand the difference. I know even when I go out and talk with people, it's like you kind of go through it, and they still don't quite get the idea of what is a watch, what is an advisory. I think they understand the warning piece. I think that's the easiest one to understand, but they really just don't quite grasp all the terminology. And then the other thing is, the way the weather service products are set up, when we have a big event going on, a lot of times we're issuing a lot of different products to cover an event. And some of the feedback they got from Hurricane Sandy was the number of products it took us to describe basically two major hazards, flooding and wind. And so when they started looking at that, it's like, okay, how can we start making things a little bit simpler to allow the message not to get drowned out or be confused because people are looking in so many different areas for information. So that was kind of the impetus for why we started looking at, as well as started looking to make these changes. When you look at trying to then figure out, okay, we know what the problem is, how do we go about trying to fix it? What is the method for trying to, improve the system? So really, you kind of have two pathways you could go down. You could go down a repair strategy, which says, okay, what we've got isn't too far off. If we make a few tweaks here and there, we can probably improve what we're doing without having to, start all over again, which makes when you're dealing with software changes and training staff and trying to train users on what the new things are, if we can go that route, it tends to be something that can be done a little bit more quickly and, isn't quite as labor intensive to do. If we go to the other strategy, the revamp strategy, at that point, now we're talking about some pretty major changes, not only within the weather service of changing policy, changing how we do things, changing the paradigm. We're talking about changing software. And then from there, if we have to change software and we're changing things like that, then the vendors have to do the same thing as well. So then it becomes an impact on your operations because now you guys are having to get new software in and you're having to figure out what new products are coming, what's in those products, so that you can still convey the message. So it's a lot bigger deal when we start looking at revamping as opposed to just repairing. So this is a chart right here of the kind of the simplification timeline, kind of how this process has worked. And you notice The initial stages of us collecting comments began all the way back in 2018, August of 2018. And then we looked at from there reformatting the flash flood warnings. I know we spent some time talking about that late in 2019 and early part of 2020, kind of making sure everybody understood what was coming, what those changes were, for us to get a feel for how you're using our products, to try to make sure, because again, we're dealing with the flood advisory scenarios, things like that. How are those being used? So that was kind of what we were doing in that time period. That's part of your repair strategy, because it's tweaking the products, it's making some adjustments within them, but it's not a complete do-over. And now what we're looking for, and this was the first thing that came out last summer, was looking at the thought of discontinuing advisories. And that was in the next kind of thing. And that's where you started getting into a revamp, because now we're changing how we do business. We're changing what products we use, things like that. So the kind of the initial, push of that was last summer. And now that's going to be something that's going to be coming back around again. And I think that was one of the, I think I put a email out a couple weeks ago, kind of with that information as far as what's coming there. And there's some webinars that are going to be in the month of May. I think there's 4 of them that they're hosting. And those are important. If you guys have time to get on one of those, sign up for those, get on and share your feedback, because your information, your feedback on how you use the products, how it's going to impact what you do is important for the folks at headquarters to hear, so that as they're going through this process, they have a little bit more information to work from. So, that's kind of where you get into that last line here on this table, is that discontinuing the advisories and initiating generic weather statements, plain language statements that would go out. And those will go not only for hydro, but it's going to be all weather types across the Weather Service, whether we're talking winter, whether we're talking wind, all those things for events that are just below warning criteria that we would traditionally right now issue an advisory for. Those would just be kind of plain language statements. So I would encourage you guys to get on one of those webinars and to share your feedback with the folks at headquarters who are working on this project. So, we're going to jump ahead here. We're going to take a look right now. The reformatting of the flash flood warnings. This was kind of that first step of a reformat and for a repair strategy. And one of the big changes that you saw here is kind of two of them. One, the flash flood warning took on the look that you saw with the tornado warning, and now with the severe warning of the what the hazard is, what the source is, what the impact. So we're giving the same format that you're seeing in these other products. So it makes it a little bit easier as far as knowing where to go find the information in the statement. You can see it, you know exactly what it is, where to go find it. And then the other part is, and this is the part that's at the bottom, and sometimes this is the part that gets overlooked, but this is where your machine tags are. Again, you're dealing with, whether it's observed, what the threat is. If the threat's considerable or catastrophic, you're going to see it in there. If it's just base, that won't be in the product. And then you're looking at expected rainfall. And one of the things that's going to be changing shortly with this expected rainfall is the expected rainfall is going to say expected rainfall rate as opposed to just expected rainfall. So it kind of gives you an idea of, what kind of rates are you looking at? Because when we're dealing with flash flooding, a lot of times the rate of the rainfall is so much more important than what the actual amounts are. So that's a change that's going to be coming in that product. So again, we're dealing with the flash flood warnings. They did adjust the WIA alert, so that's only on the considerable or the catastrophic, and we're going to talk about reasons why that decision was made here in a couple slides. Okay, so when we're looking at the potential tags here, you can either have base, considerable, or catastrophic. Those are the 3 tags. And then for your source information, generally speaking, it's either going to be radar indicated or observed. Those are going to be the 2 that you see there. And then the last part, again, is going to be your explanation. You're going to see expected rainfall rate, which is either going to be inches per hour, minutes, okay? Or if it is a dam or levee failure, that could also show up in that product, okay? So, if we're dealing with, one of the dams in the area that may potentially be failing, and if that's the reason why we're issuing the flash flood warning, you're going to see that information in that tag with a dam failure. So we don't have a lot of those around here. I think in 10 years, I don't remember. I think once or twice I remember seeing a flash flood watch for a potential dam that was having some issues out in Farmville. But outside of that, I don't remember us having to really seeing dam failure situations. So even in the rainfall with Michael in 2018, I know we had some spillways and things like that activated that had never activated before. But at no point in time did anybody really think that any of the dams were going to be compromised. So hopefully that's not something that we would see. But if it is, there is ability to put that into the product. So I think one of the other things, and this is when we look at kind of some of the changes, when they looked at the analysis of the flash flood warnings across the United States, not just an area, but across the entire country, and they went back and looked at the what was the causative event and things like that, 90% of those were base flash flood warnings. Only 8% were considered considerable and 2% catastrophic. So, when we look at kind of why we kind of stopped weeing on the base, this kind of gives a little bit of information because 90% of these were just base flash flood warnings, which was, generally is going to be considered, radar indicated. We really don't have confirmation or observation yet at that point that we've got a problem. So I think that's part of the reason why. One of the other reasons through this change was the fact that there were, a lot of people who were getting the warning who weren't really necessarily impacted. One example that, as we worked through this on the Weather Service side, we were given was there were a lot of folks in, in metropolitan areas who are, living in apartments, things like that, that are, 2, 3, 4 stories up. There'd be a flash flood warning issued in the middle of the night, their phones going off, waking everybody up for an event where they most likely are not really going to be impacted. So, that was the reason why the WEO was changed. So it really was only looking to, hit these higher end events, these considerable or catastrophic where we knew we had problems going on and we needed people to take action immediately because of the threat to life and property. So, so this kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of why we made that change. Are there going to be maybe some potential cases where, we maybe wished, we would have gotten a WEO out earlier, maybe, but I think, that's one of the things that we're learning in our office is, we've got some different techniques we've been using over the last year and a half using flash data, which is really kind of helping give us a better idea of, with rainfall, how much is potentially running off, how much is building up, things like that. So, there are some new tools out there that are really helping us to kind of hone in and be a little bit more specific as far as where, flash flooding is to be expected. So I think with the advent of those tools, I think, these changes here, we can kind of, limit maybe some of the impact of not weeing every flash flood warning that goes out. All right, so looking at your product consolidation, and for me, this is one of the things I think will be very helpful, not only for our staff, but I think hopefully for you guys as well. We are consolidating, basically right now, there's going to be about 7 products that are consolidated into 2. The Flood Watch is going to be consolidated basically into 1 product. So instead of it being, is it a flash flood watch? Is it and this is the term we don't like to use, aerial flood watch? It's just going to be Flood Watch. That's just going to be the straight term. Now, within the product itself, we still have the ability to say, that it could be flash flooding that's expected to occur. So we can still kind of put it in the product, but it's not going to be in the headline. And as far as the VTEC coding goes, it's going to be Flood Watch. It's going to be the FA code. There's 2 caveats to that. And from things that, that in our area, they would be very unlikely that we would be using them. One would be as if it's a dam failure. If it's a dam failure, we could potentially use it there where we would put we would still be able to use flash flood. The other one would be if it's a debris flow. It's not too often that we have to deal with those situations from burn scars and things like that. That's I think more of a situation they use more out west than we would use here. But those are the only 2 times where we could still see the FF.A code, the flash flood watch headline. So, and the software, we've got the software set up for those specific events to be able to handle it. The other change that you're going to see, and this gets to the flood advisory. You can see in there right now there's 5 different potential product headlines that you can get for a flood advisory. Urban and small stream, arroyo and small stream, just small stream, flood advisory, and hydraulic advisory. So they all use the same FA.Y VTEC code. We're going to consolidate that down into one product. It's just going to say flood advisory. And that's simplifying things a lot. Within the product itself, again, if we want to be a little bit more specific as far as the type, we can still do that. If we want to put an urban and small stream, we can put that in the type in the product, but it's not going to be as part of the statement itself. So as far as the headline goes, and the headline of the product is just going to include the term flood advisory. So hopefully that makes things a lot simpler. And the other thing is, we're going to be reformatting these products into the what, where, when, impacts, additional detail type of format that we use in a lot of our other products. So hopefully that'll be, real easy for people then to be able to find the information because it'll all be in the same format. It won't be a different format than what we're using elsewhere. The only one that'll have the different format is the impact-based warning that the flash flood warning currently is in that we changed to. Okay, so if we're looking at the flood watch, you can kind of see a comparison here of the 2 products. So the one that's on the left, that's the current product. And you see it says in the headline, flash flood watch in effect. What the new format product is going to look like is it's just going to say flood watch in effect. And for the what term, that's where we can put the flash flooding as possible. So we can still get the mention of flash flood in there. It's just not going to be in the headline. But it's that's kind of the bigger change. And for your vendors, that change in the VTEC code will be important because instead of it being an FF.A, you're only going to see the FA.A. So it'll just be the one product. And for your vendor, it really may not change anything because they already use the FA.A code anyway for flood watches. So really, for the vendor, it really may not be that big of a deal. So you're just going to see that FF.A VTEC code only used for those 2 cases, the dam failure, levee failure, or the burn scar situation. And when we're dealing with the flood advisory, again, we're talking about a change in the headline. So your headline is now just going to read flood advisory in effect, and then you're going to get into the what, where, when, and impacts part of the statement. So we're reorganizing the text in the body part of the statement, but it really kind of then meshes up with a lot of the other products that we already put out as far as, advisories, things like, small craft advisories, things like that. All those things all have that same what, where, when, and impacts format. So the formatting then becomes consistent. And then as far as what type, that's where we can put the urban and small stream, flooding due to heavy rain or things like that. So that'll be your big change that you're going to see with those products. So again, we get consistency within the products that we're issuing in other parts of the warning and advisory, product suite, and the headline gets much simpler as far as what's being issued. Okay, the last couple slides I have, we're going to look at some of the proposed changes that could be coming down the road, and these are some things hopefully that will, that will make things a little bit simpler. And these are some areas where I think as you go through, if you guys get on one of those webinars, you can provide some input. The first proposed change is updating warnings with warnings. Right now, when we update a warning, we update it with a statement. So if it's a flash flood warning, it's in place, we issue a flash flood statement. If it's a flood warning, we issue a flood statement. If we issue a severe thunderstorm warning, we issue a severe statement after that to update the product. So you've got 2 different products that we're using to update the same event. Can be confusing. A lot of folks only have in their system set up to look for warnings. They're not looking for those follow-up statements. So there's a lot of good information that occurs in those follow-up statements, but if you're not looking for them, you don't get it. So the proposal here, and I think this one makes a lot of sense, is to update warnings with warning products. So we keep the same pill in place, and we're issuing the update through the same product. So that way, any updates, any additional information is going to be coming out in the same product that we issued the initial warning in. and I think it'll make things a lot easier to be able to find. So it is going to streamline the process, okay? And the other thing is on the flood side, you know, we already use the FLS product code for advisories. So when we update a warning with the FLS code, it's very easy for that information to get lost within other advisories that are being issued under that same pill. So this way we get the warning information staying with warning stuff, we keep advisory stuff issuing with the statements, and it's a little bit cleaner that way. So that's one of those changes that could potentially be coming through the whole process that we're going through of, you know, consolidation and changes. So that'll be something to keep an eye on. Right now, I think that is potentially, that something that would be out in 2023 maybe. I think it's probably about 2 years out that they're looking at doing that. The other one we're going to kind of, this is the bigger change, and this is one where, you know, the weather source really needs to give your input in. Notice the word advisory is no longer there. What's being proposed right now is to change from the watch warning advisory mindset to just watch and warning. So we're only looking at the bigger warning type level events. So everything that's sub-event will be handled with what we call plain language statements. So if we have a 1 to 2 inch snowfall, which right now we would use to, you know, we would be putting an advisory out for, now we would just put out a plain snow statement and say 1 to 2 inches of snow is expected, and that would be it. So that's kind of where the thinking is going here, is that where we have, you know, events that we think are warning criteria, we'd be issuing the watch still for the preparation part, and we want people to take action, we issue the warning, and beyond that, it's going to be more plain language statements. So I will share my presentation with you guys, and if you click on the link, notice I've got the public information statement highlighted there. You can go in there, click on that, and that's going to take you to that P&S statement that shows, it's going to give you the links to sign up for one of those different webinars to kind of get a bigger picture of what the changes and what they're proposing, what things will look like maybe in 2023 or 2024. Okay, so that's everything that I have.